My method for doing the reviews is to try to be as fair and analytic as possible. Of course, I have my biases, and in this one, I am very biased because I know What If very well. I've collected a lot of the issues from the first volume to the second volume. In other words, it went through a couple different series. There were the old What Ifs, and then there were the new What Ifs, but I'm familiar with both worlds. And this series doesn't seem to be connected to the comics at all, or even the original intention or the framework. But let me try to be fair and describe what is occurring, what is not occurring. So essentially, What If, as a concept, just looks at alternate histories of the Marvel Universe. In this case, the cartoon is basically taking the MCU history, and that's very critical. It's not Marvel history, it's not the comics, or even the history of the character. It's just the history of the MCU movies from what it appears. And so we're essentially getting an alternate version of the movies as a story, but now in television format. So in this first episode, basically instead of Captain America becoming Captain America, right? It's not Steve Rogers, it's Carter who gets the super soldier serum. It's Carter who gets the super soldier serum, and she becomes Captain Carter, essentially Captain America. And she fights during World War II and fights against the Red Skull. So Uatu, the Watcher, does show up. He does a little introduction, but really, this is not really connected to What If in the comics. I'm not going to say much more than that, so let me try to judge the cartoon on its own terms, because I keep getting accused of not letting the adapted material stand on its own feet. But I gotta be honest, because this really would have been helped by the comic, because the thing unto itself is really not impressive. With Motu and Masters of the Universe Revelation, although I didn't like the way the story was going, I can't deny it was well told or it was done with good animation. But this one is almost the complete opposite. The animation style is at the very best just plain, very workmanlike. It's very basic, and it seems to have a very Disney touch, but not in a good way. So the animation style, it didn't work for me. And the action is well done in certain places, and the question is this an interesting story unto itself? And the way they told it, I'd have to say no. It's not a very interesting story. She gets the serums, he beats up a couple of Nazis, he faces someone who doubts her abilities, and the only really kind of interesting touch I found was that Steve does help her, but in an Iron Man kind of suit. I thought that was really interesting. And the way the suit is designed, it's the old suit, it's not the new suit. So that was an interesting touch. And that was about it. The rest of it just seemed very kind of dumb, silly. It just went all over the place. And it tries to have this kind of profound, what happened to Steve happens to her, and she's basically vaulted into the future and all that. But it just felt really stylistically and narratively kind of boring, and I just didn't see much what we're going to get out of it. And apparently the character is going to return, so we're going to see more of Captain Carter. And that's it in a nutshell. It's just basically an alternate version of the MCU movie. It's just done in a different format. Some of the voices are the same from the movies, some of the voices are new, but really there's not really much to say here. It was just kind of a low rent effort in my regard. It just went by the numbers. You didn't really have to pay attention because you knew she was going to win. I mean, the Nazis aren't going to be allowed to win in this reality, even though it's an alternate reality. So there was no dramatic tension. Like, the Red Skull had no chance of really winning. And a lot of people complained about the power. She was more powerful than Captain America, or she was better at things. I never caught that. Honestly, it just seems like such a silly fantasy after a while. It's like she's just a Disney princess. She's just jumping around, defeating stuff. It was kind of like, all right, whatever. That's what it is. It's just a silly romantic fable. And it kind of lost what was interesting about even the first film, which was sort of a sly commentary on propaganda. Here, it's like there's no subtext. It's just, she's really good with the serum. I'm glad she got the serum at least. Wow, we're really lucky. And that's about it. So there's not much of a story. There's not much of a style. No connection really to the comic. It just felt like a chore even watching this thing. But at least it was relatively short, so I'll give it that. It could have dragged on, kept going for no reason. So again, this will really hit people in different ways. It did not land with me at all. I just thought everything was just so flat. And I'm stealing from Nerdrotic because that's what he described. It's just flat, and I agree, it's very flat. Now, he went into the politics, but I just tried to look at the story, and the story was just, there was really nothing there. It's really very, very, very just competently made, and that's about it. So that's Captain Carter, the first episode of What If. I'm going to have to give this a pretty severe 5 out of 10. Because again, with Infinity War and Endgame, those plots were just so insulting and filled with so many errors, just massive continuity and editing errors. But this is just very flat and uninspired, but it does move from A to B. At least the plot is competently laid out. So I'll give them that much. So it's a 5 out of 10. But would I recommend seeing this? No. No, I have to keep watching this because I am a big What If fan, and at least if it draws attention to What If as mythology, and I'll do videos on that, that's interesting, but this episode was not interesting, and so far as I can see, the series idea is not interesting, but I will keep giving it more chances, but this gets a very severe 5 out of 10. I don't recommend watching it, or if you do watch it, come in with very low expectations. Thanks for listening.